13 Assassins has what many action movies need. It had a great villain that transcended evil, great concept about 13 brave warriors stepping up to put an end to the evil, even at the cost of their own lives. Their heroism against impossible odds, and it was the last hurrah for the samurai code. The film was also set in 1844, when true samurai warriors were hard to find. So the 2009 13 Assassins is a very entertaining film. It's also probably the most popular samurai film. I feel like even more casual viewers know about this film, even if they're not really into the genre. And this one is not to get confused with the 1960 or even the 1990 TV version. Yes, it's a popular story, it's been around for decades, but here I think it's presented the best. This is an ambitious and big budget epic. It's unfortunately rare, you don't really see films like this anymore today. And the film is just directed with excellent visuals and sound, and it was all done by the legendary director of Takashi Miike. The last 45 minutes in this film are just devoted to the most inventive and ingenious final battle I've ever seen. But it's not the sort of incomprehensible mayhem that you often see with action films like this. This film is really just a lesson to those filmmakers that constantly have fight scenes where they cut away and just shake the camera all over the place. What I like about this is it just sits still and lets you watch the action without just the camera going all over the place. And what Miike does is he choreographs all the action in the film and he makes it visible and comprehensible. But more importantly is he's spent the first 2 acts of the film building up to this very moment. He's established all the characters and gave them life and personality. And he's also showed them the plan for this very moment. By the time the big battle happens, we already know who all the 13 samurai are. And we understand why many of them behave the way they do. Just the care taken with the screenplay and the shot composition really deserves comparison with Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. When I first saw this film, when it came out years ago, I kind of just shrugged it off as just a movie that was there just to set up a really big final battle scene. But after I rewatched it recently, I realized that I really wasn't viewing it right. And now I can see why everyone still talks about this movie almost 10 years after it came out. This is really just how you make a remake. And I really just like what Miike did with this film. He took the original film and he just made it an all-around better movie. Don't get me wrong, the original still is a classic, and it's a great film and great feat for the time. Final fights like in that film, you didn't really see, and it was amazing that they were able to pull it off. But Miike took that very same concept and he modernized it, gave it better pacing and action, and he even added more to each of the characters. They feel more real in this. What's interesting is that the opening sequence of this film is a shot-by-shot recreation of the 1960s original film. Like with the original, it begins with a man and he's kneeling in a courtyard, and then he just disembowels himself, and this is all protests against the Lord Noritsugu, the main antagonist of the film. He's the half-brother of the shogun. This seppuku was in protest to Noritsugu's cruelty. This character is just a monster, and we get to see everything he does in full Miike style detail. He's really just on another level from the original film, and actually even the 1990 remake. In fact, he actually makes both of those versions seem quite calm. This Noritsugu amputates people. He kicks severed heads across rooms. And he also exercises his right to you-know-what to anyone in his domain. It's the R word, I can't really say it on YouTube. And what's kind of scary is that the shogun, plans to promote him. So already this film is just adding so much more stake to the antagonist in this. Like, if he gets promoted, that's really bad. What's also interesting, and something I didn't know, is that Nerdy was actually a real historical figure. He lived from 1811 to 1835. He ruled over an area called Akashi, which is nowadays the Kansai area of Japan. Though from what I read about him, he doesn't sound like the psychopath that he is in the films. I guess that was just added for entertainment. So to fight this, Sir Doi seeks the samurai named Shinzaiman. And when we first meet him, he's just peacefully fishing atop a ladder in the sea. But he keeps his sword close to him at all times. Each one of these men has their own personality and backstory. Some are more involved than others, and of course there's also one that's used for comic relief. And that's where Koyata comes into play. And actually later it's revealed that he might be a Tengu spirit, though it's sort of left open for interpretation. And what's cool is that he's basically the Kikuchiyo that we saw in Seven Samurai. He's goofy, but he'll get serious in the heat of battle. The 13 assassins plan to attack Nerdy while he's journeying to Edo. This was called official journey. The lords stayed to show their loyalty to the shogun. And this system was really just used to help the shogun keep tabs on the lords. The odds for these warriors seems almost impossible. It's like the story of 300. They were only 13, taking on 200. To help achieve this, the samurai rig an entire village as one trap. And with Miike's version, he actually cuts out a lot of the planning that was in the original, because in the original there's like a half hour worth of planning, and then when the final battle happens it really pays off. Where this just gives us more of a longer final fight. And that's not saying that the fight wasn't long in the previous two films, but here it definitely is a lot longer and it's a lot more epic. In the film it's clear that a lot of planning is going into this, but just the details remain vague until you finally see it, and it's a big surprise just how much planning went into it. It kind of makes you question just how the assassins just found the time and resources to create such an elaborate ambush. I guess it's not really the point of the film though. Instead, it's more so about the shock that they would go to these lengths just to kill this guy. Pretty incredible. What we get then is the most intense 45 minutes in any samurai film. Explosions, blood, gore, swords, arrows, traps, pure insanity, and pure fun and enjoyment. It's kind of like Miike was being held back the entire film until this very moment. It's almost like they locked him in the closet and now he just broke free, and now we finally get to see the Miike in this film. And it's really just a stunning display and one of the most greatest battle sequences in any film. But it doesn't just end with that battle. After that, you get one of the best final duels. Hanbei versus Shinzaiman. It's one of the best one-on-one fight scenes I've ever seen. You get both exceptional swordsmen, they both have a past together, and now they're finally taking on each other. And just the way it ends up being won is pretty surprising every time I see it. Usually you don't see someone win in this way, but I guess it really just fits the main message that they're going for. Samurai films just have such a rich history, and Miike brought it all back elegantly in traditional costumes, idealistic dialogue, sharp characterizations, and just a glorious choreographed fight scene. And this film just really must have been an incredible feat to achieve. I find a lot of fight scenes in films now can be kind of boring, especially in more of the modern Hollywood films. But I think this is because they often substitute movement for drama. But in 13 Assassins, by the time we get that big fight, we already care for all the characters involved. We know and understand them. And the fight sequences are just broken down into some very structured segments to where it doesn't appear to be repetitive. Hollywood action directors should really just study this film, especially just in the way it focuses on story in the midst of all the violence. Speaking of violence, Takashi Miike is a director that perhaps deals with violence better than any other director. While it's there in plain sight, it's never the sole focus or the point of any of his films. Even his controversial Ichi the Killer, while mainly known for its ultra-violence and problem with censors, when you actually get down and watch the film and look past all the violence itself is actually secondary. And it's really just there to present a result of the setting and just the personality of each of the characters. In 13 Assassins, the violence represents corruption in the code of Bushido. And as a result of this, the only way to fix a problem is with more violence. There's a lot of subtext in the film. The 13 Assassins are essentially making a last stand for the traditional samurai code. It's a similar concept to what we saw in Yoji Yamada's Samurai Trilogy, especially the Twilight Samurai. That film was set in 1868, and it was about a samurai who works for a clan as an accountant, and he is being forced to recall the code of his tradition. While I was watching 13 Assassins, I was pretty sure that they were using CGI effects, but it was actually hard to notice them. Samurai films always were in traditional special effects, and special effects should be used to deceive the eye, not insult it. Most of the movement here is at least somewhat plausible in terms of reality. I feel like way too often CGI is just overused and it just looks really bad. CGI should really just be a last resort. 13 Assassins is a masterpiece in action films, and it's one that could be studied for lessons by the manufacturers of Hollywood action blockbusters. It's a must-see film for anyone, especially beginners and westerners. If you haven't already, please watch 13 Assassins. It's an action movie masterpiece. So if you've made it this far in the video, I just want to thank you and even congratulate you, because I know a lot of people's attention spans isn't the best now, especially with TikTok. But please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to have access to my Discord, you could join my Patreon. We have a bunch of new tiers that I added. And like always, thank you for watching.